Leslie Vernon has made this arrangement with these graduate students, one of which includes this girl Taylor, who is interviewing him throughout the documentary. And they're interviewing him about his stalking, his pursuit of his whole setting up this final encounter with his quote-unquote final girl, what they call behind the mask, they call Survivor Girl, who is named Kelly. He's this young 17-year-old virgin that works at this local diner. So the documentary crew follows Vernon around as he stalks her a little bit and makes her feel weird. And they also follow Leslie as he goes to visit his mentor, who's played by Scott Wilson, who's not exactly a genre stalwart, but he's a familiar face. But he's also he's an actor with a lot of presence and kind of dignity and just commanding ways about him. So it's interesting to have him as kind of the retired, serial killer. I get maybe he's a retired, reformed, Michael Myers-esque. What if Michael Myers married his survivor girl, Laurie Strode, and they live happily ever after? Then you would end up with, this character, Eugene, who plays Leslie Vernon's slasher killer mentor. So they go to visit him. The whole time this is being filmed documentary style. Nathan Basil is very unassuming or unprepossessing, I suppose, as the choice for the lead character of Leslie Vernon, the serial killer. Like, I've heard a lot of people say they didn't dig Nathan Basil as the serial killer, like he wasn't intimidating, and in some ways he kind of comes off in kind of a gay vibe. He acts a little funny, a little too happy, a little quirky. So he's a thin, attractive male, I guess, maybe that translates to gay vibe, but I don't know. But anyway, for me, that worked. I mean, not the gay vibe part, but that he was an unassuming person, that he wasn't this big, physical, imposing presence that, you were just afraid to run into. You didn't want to see his silhouette in a dark alley, He was a thin, normal-looking guy next door kind of guy. And very, looking very non-threatening, very harmless. So that was cool. And it actually helped set up his transformation at the end of the film when you see him as Leslie Vernon, where he's told you all throughout the film the things that he's going to do, how he's going to trap these people in his ancestral home, and then he's going to go there and start killing them one by one as they get separated, and where they're going to go, and the weapons and tools they're going to pick up, and what the symbolism is involved of it, and which way his survival girl Kelly is going to go, and how he's going to trap her there, and they're going to follow each other, and then supposedly he'll kill her or she'll kill him, and that's kind of the fulfillment of his slasher destiny. It's what he's waiting for. How through the enactment of these patterns and motifs and just kind of plot points from the endless slasher films of the past, it becomes almost sort of a mythological rebirth or resurrection for the character of Leslie Vernon, because he's setting up the night. And basically, if you look at it in terms of, this is not a sequel, this is his origin film, this is his original film. So this is the one where he killed, those 13 people that first time, or if it's Michael Myers, this is the time that he killed, all those people in Haddonfield, or if it's Leatherface, this is the time they got that group of teenagers with Sally and Franklin and all those. But anyway, at the same time, they're not making fun of it. This is not a scary movie kind of spoof on you movie, like, hey, he's got a knife, wahaha, this is funny. There's humor found in kind of the irony of some of the situations, but there's a reverence paid towards just the conventions of the genre. There's kind of a tongue-in-cheek nod towards like the psychological symbolism of it all. Like there's an explanation of yonic imagery, which is the opposite of phallic, as it's explained in the film. Yonic being that it's a female genitalia symbolism. The opposite of the phallic symbol being the knife is yonic symbol, with like closets and gateways and whatnot, safe havens and areas of feminine power and whatnot. So that's explained in the film, but that's very tongue-in-cheek, that part of it. But then the mythological primal act of the hunt and the stalking and the killing is treated with a lot of reverence. The character Kelly in the film is the final girl that the character of Leslie Vernon is actually stalking. The way that their world is set up, in some ways you could say it satirizes the genre. In other ways, it very much, it just stays true to the conventions and literally sets them up, the way I see it, sets them up as law, as canon, as this is the way it is, this is the way it should be, and in some ways they tell you why, this is why it is this. But anyway, that's one of the cool things, because the film is open to interpretation, so that's what I like about it. It starts out funny in the beginning, just because of the characters, because they're kind of so likable, and the situation is kind of odd, and they're laughing about it and having a good time. But then by the end, it kind of takes a turn, and it becomes not so funny anymore. You see what Leslie Vernon was really doing, and how serious he is about becoming, Leslie Vernon, and seeing his legend grow, and seeing him become a legendary killer, world famous, worldwide, universal, whatever you want to call it. And that's what makes the movie really complete, because if it had just stayed in the comedy mode all the way through, it would have been a big failure. But at the end, it buckles in, it puts on its mask, and as Stephen King would say, it jumps out and says booga booga, and literally tries to scare you, and Nathan Basil, he pulls it off. How does it stand up to the conventions of the slasher genre? I think I already pointed most of them out in the beginning. But you got the final girl, the survivor girl with Kelly, right? You got the killer, Leslie Vernon. He has his backstory in it, supposedly, and Leslie Vernon explains it in the movie. He explains his backstory, where he says that his mother was raped and murdered, and how when he was a kid, so he went around and was taking revenge on the townspeople and killing them. So the townspeople got mad, and they cornered him and burned him alive in his family home. And so now he's coming back years later to take his revenge on those townspeople. So obviously the guy's not dead as he's making this documentary, but that's his backstory. So anyway, so then you have the authority figures and the parents. There are no parents in this. The authority figures of the police aren't really there, but we do have the magician, the sage, the wise mentor character of kind of the Dr. Loomis character in this one, played by Robert Englund. This is an interesting turn for him, because I heard a lot of people say that they wanted to see Robert Englund play the mentor serial killer, which would be just like an older version of, Freddy Krueger, if you will. But anyway, I thought this was actually a better choice for him. It was more against type, and he pulled it off with real dignity and believability, by playing the mentor figure, the doctor that's hunting down Leslie Vernon, or he's the Dr. Loomis of this film, and he represents kind of the authority figures. The isolated area, Leslie Vernon sets it up beforehand that these kids are gonna go to this party at his ancestral home, the Vernon home, and I keep calling it ancestral, but it's just where his family lived when all this stuff happened, or whatever it is. But anyway, so yeah, you have the isolated area. So there you go. I mean, behind the mask, it stacks up. You have all those elements, then at the same time, it's kind of a self-conscious satire on the genre. It's also self-referential, but also the entire thing is kind of an homage and a tribute to kind of the great slasher elements of the past. Drive-in total-wise, you have a couple sets of breasts, a couple, slashed throats and stabbings. Not a lot in the way of gore, but there's some suspense as it builds up towards the end. There are some good scares. There are a lot of laughs along the way. But overall, it's a film that if you're a fan of slasher films and you want to celebrate them, this is a way to help you celebrate this heritage, the heritage of slasher films. So, on Streebo's Screamometer, we'll have to give Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon, an 8 out of 10 screams. That's right, 8 out of 10 screams. So that's pretty good. I definitely say check it out. And while you're at it, watch Hatchet, and then go and see Rob Zombie's Halloween again. And you're having a good slasher year, and Streebo's here having a good slasher year with you.